I have sailed the world, beheld its wonder, from the Dardanelles to the mountains of Peru. But there's no place like London. No, there's no place like London. There's a hole in the road like a great pit, and the vermin of the road inhabit it. On its morsels what a pig could spit, and it goes by the name of London. At the top of the whole live a privileged few, making mock of the vermin of the lowers, turning beauty into filth and greed. I too have sailed the world and seen its wonders, for the cruelty of men is as wondrous as Peru. But there's no place like London. Wait, what's your rush? What's your hurry? You gave me such a fright, I thought you was a ghost. Half a minute, kick you, sit you down, sit. Oh, I meant to see you haven't seen a customer for weeks. Did you come in for a pie, sir? Do forgive me if I had a little vague. What was that? But you think we had the way? From the way that people keep avoiding? No, you don't. Heaven knows I try, sir. But there's no one comes it even to inhale. Right, sir, would you like a drop of ale? Mind you, I can hardly blame them. These are probably the worst pies in London. Now then, my friend, now do your purpose. Patience, enjoy it. Revenge can't be taken in. Hello guys, we're now in the month of October, and I know I've said that in my previous reviews, but since it's already October, I think it's fine to start a new series of horror movies. So for this series, I'm going to start off with one movie that really scared me as a little kid, but now I've kind of grown out of my fears of that particular film, so I'm really excited to review it, and that movie just has to be Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street is a 2007 horror musical directed by Tim Burton, and it's actually based off of the 1979 Broadway musical of the same name that was written and composed by Stephen Sondheim. And this adaptation stars Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, Sacha Baron Cohen, Alan Rickman, Timothy Spall, and so many other roles. So this movie is about this insane barber named Sweeney Todd. It takes place in Victorian England in the year 1846, and Sweeney Todd is this barber who enters London. He decides to go back because he was prohibited from the UK several years ago until he decides to come back to get revenge on somebody. And he decides to get revenge through the use of his razors, through his talent of being a barber. And little did he know that this type of revenge would drive him insane, and eventually he goes on this type of hunt that instead of just shaving people, he starts to slit their throats, and it's really bloody, and I think I am going to stop by talking about this movie because there are other things that people need to think about when they watch this movie, because this is a non-spoiler review. Before I really begin this review, let's have a little scary story time. So, this movie came out in 2007, right? Actually, the first time I saw it was 2008. Well, I really did not watch it, but from what I can remember 10 years ago, as a little 9-year-old kid on October 2008, my sister watched this movie with a few of her friends who were exchange students back when she was in high school. And I remember it was Halloween, everyone was getting ready, I was getting ready to go trick-or-treating outside in the neighborhood, but my sister and her friends were really gonna watch Sweeney Todd. And from the moment that the DVD menu was showing, all of these horrific items, I was petrified and polarized and terrified all at once. And whenever it got to scenes of people singing and within their costumes, I got even more scared because I was not able to take all of the horrors all at once. So this is a movie that is considered a childhood trauma. So yeah, I'm just trying to say that this movie did harm me in a way, but not in the sense of making me scarred for life, but it did play a significant amount of trauma into my childhood. Now, I did not see the full movie. I didn't sit down and watch the entire movie because this movie is definitely not recommended for younger audiences. I really do not recommend this movie for younger audiences. But if you are like me, just a little boy, just peeking at scenes, then you can know how terrifying this movie is. It wasn't until I grew up in, I guess, let's say, high school and college, where I watched it and again, and although it's scary, you do pick up some philosophical messages about the brutality of reality and human society. Now, as a young adult who has seen this movie several times and has conquered my fear of this movie, I am actually kind of proud to say that Sweeney Todd is actually one of the best musical to film adaptations I've seen. And this is really saying something because I have seen a lot of movie musical adaptations and they're alright, but Sweeney Todd does something that's really special, and it also relates back to classic cinema, especially with the way that Tim Burton directs this movie, because based off of the way how the Broadway production of Sweeney Todd was written by Sondheim, I am very glad that they got Tim Burton to direct a film adaptation because I thought he did a wonderful job. There are a lot of things to really appreciate from this movie, Sweeney Todd, because it's one of those rare films that just follows this type of Hollywood style of filmmaking that directors don't really go back to nowadays. What I mean by saying that is that the way that Tim Burton directed this movie feels like a classic horror movie from Universal Studios. Although this movie is by Warner Brothers and DreamWorks, it definitely has a Universal creature type of feel, especially with the things that Universal's trying to do today with their monsters. But of course, it didn't really work out with the Tom Cruise reboot of The Mummy. But what I'm trying to say is that this feels like a classic monster movie from the 30s and 40s. Whenever you watch movies like Frankenstein or something like that was filmed in the 30s, Sweeney Todd is that type of movie that kind of goes back to that type of filmmaking. And it's due to the way how the camera and the lighting is put on each of the characters, especially through cinematography. And that is something that really impressed me with the way that Tim Burton directed it. And of course, this movie does have a lot of Tim Burton tropes, with weird characters, wacky costuming, set designs, and other things like that. But what this film does is that it makes use of its mise-en-scène elements. Mise-en-scène is very heavily relied and used in Sweeney Todd, and I thought it was a fantastic decision made by Tim Burton in making an adaptation for Sweeney Todd, because I'm also going to critique mise-en-scène and cinematography together because I think they intertwine when you're watching and analyzing a movie like Sweeney Todd. So basically the cinematography of this movie is it's not shot in black and white. Although the movie is in color, this movie is just incredibly colorless. The way that the movie is lit is that it's very black and white. It's very gray. There's not much color within the surroundings of Victorian England, as it's trying to portray Victorian England in a very dark and depressing place. And also when you see the costumings of Johnny Depp as Sweeney Todd or Helena Bonham Carter as Mrs. Lovett, no one really wears that much color. The only people that wear color are the side characters that come in later in the film. They're probably in blue or something else like that. But also by the way of the hair of Sweeney Todd, that Johnny Depp has, where it's mostly black, but there's also a white streak, kind of like Rogue in the X-Men. But it's trying to represent the way how he sees the world, that it's all black and white. There's no such thing as happiness to him. And that basically plays a tremendous amount of mise-en-scène to that basically is just a symbol of how depressed and sad he is, which I will not get into spoiler territory because this is technically a revenge movie and he's definitely feeling sad about what happened to him in the past, but I will not spoil about what happened to him, in the film. And the most dominant color that you see in this movie is red, which basically represents death, with the fake blood squirming out anytime Sweeney kills someone, and red becomes this ultimate dominant color of mise-en-scène, which just basically represents the madness of the world, death, all those type of things. And that is one of the things that I was really impressed by Sweeney Todd. The only time you get color in this movie is when it's through a dream interpretation or past events, and those are the only times that color is used in the cinematography. And I thought it was a very wise decision by Tim Burton because it wants to like separate the present from the past or fantasy. And another thing I'm definitely going to critique are the acting and the way how they sang, because I really love the actors in this movie. I thought Johnny Depp was perfect to play Sweeney Todd. Johnny Depp is someone who like plays several characters at once in so many films, like Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean, and then of course he was Willy Wonka, and then Edward Scissorhands. But this movie is just, I guess you can just say it's like when Edward Scissorhands goes incredibly insane. And I also really loved Helena Bonham Carter as Mrs. Lovett. I thought she was great for the role. She had that type of charm, that creepy, scary charm, and when I see Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter together, I just see Joker and Harley Quinn in 1846 in Victorian England having fun, selling pies, and just Johnny Depp being a barber, and yeah. And it also feels like this type of like Batman type of style, you know, and especially since Tim Burton has directed Batman, the 1989 version, not the Nolan version, but I think he also enhanced some of his elements into Sweeney Todd as well. And I also loved Alan Rickman. I really, really miss Alan Rickman. And people can say that this is just a musical adaptation of having Bellatrix, Snape, and Jack Sparrow or Edward Scissorhands just having a little musical together. And I guess you can say that's what this movie is. One of the last things that I can say about this review is that I was really impressed with the way how all these actors got together and they practiced and rehearsed several times of singing Sondheim lyrics through the musical of Sweeney Todd. And it's really not easy to do, especially when interpreting, you know, a Broadway musical into film. And I can understand how hard it is, especially with how film is very different to stage production. And in fact, kind of like how I kind of forgot to mention this, that is that this movie does, especially the sets, they do feel like it's a stage. And I love the production design behind everything. And you could see the amount of hard work that they put into it, and you can see how the music becomes this ultimate grasp of fear for everyone. And nonetheless, I think I'm probably just going to conclude this review because this is a pretty long review, and I'm very proud that I was able to stand up to my fears. Based on flaws, I guess I even have a flaw with the musical as well. I guess there's just one romance that I thought was a little unnecessary. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of criticism from Sweeney Todd fans on my video, but I'm just saying I didn't really buy one part of the romance, but I guess you could just say that. But nonetheless, I think Sweeney Todd is amazing, and that was a small nitpick, and I actually cannot believe it that I'm going to give Sweeney Todd a 10 out of 10. Wow, I gave my childhood trauma movie a 10 out of 10? Wow, that's really saying something. I must have stepped up to my fears. Alright, guys, thank you so much for watching this movie review. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope to make more movie reviews in accordance to, like, scary movies for the month of October, since it is Halloween season. So, thanks for watching, guys. And please hit the notification button whenever I do upload a review. And I'm sorry if I'm not too fast, because, of course, I got a big life with school and stuff. I even have a midterm on Monday, and I just wanted to make an effort to just make a movie review for you guys, because I love talking about my passion for movies. But, thank you very much for watching, and be sure to subscribe.